Right. So I think one of the first question that I want to ask, whether you are aware, because see, this was communicated by the institute several months ago, whether you are aware about the standard. Actually, I want to ask that question before I start. Can we, let's see whether we can do that poll to see what is your level of understanding about the standard SL1, IFRS S1 and S2, which is going to be a critical standard both locally and globally, more than locally, globally, and now everybody in Sri Lanka speak about it, because from next year this is going to be mandatory for top 100 companies, and gradually during the next 3-4 years it's going to be applicable to all the companies. And the beauty of this standard is actually it's going to be, while it looks like non-financial reporting, it is going to be a part of financial reporting, right? How it is connected to financial statements, consolidations, all of that you are going to learn. So actually I want to ask this question before I start. Let's see whether we can get that poll to see where you are in terms of your understanding. But whatever you understanding, if you really concentrate and going to be with me, right, please make notes during the session. It is going to be a very comprehensive session covering both sustainability reporting, IFRS sustainability standards, S1 and S2. S1 is the foundation, S2, and there are many other standards. For example, you would have heard about SASB, TCFD, integrated reporting, GRI, ESRS. There are many standards around the world. What are these buzzwords, right? It's like alphabet soup. So what is going to be, because now when it comes to exam, these questions can be tested. Now if you look at for the corporate level, so the idea is this is going to be tested at a basic level, right? If you look at specifically, there is, you need to have a good understanding, awareness about, now this learning outcome, demonstrate awareness about, demonstrate awareness of good understanding of sustainability reporting. Specific knowledge has been updated and existing learning outcome. That means there is already a topic in corporate level for financial reporting called sustainability reporting, but now with these new standards, you are supposed to know what are the widely used frameworks and standards, the concept of proportionality, what is that, and then paced adoption in Sri Lanka, transition relief, all of these standards, right? What are these standards? What's this going to be? Now future financial reporting landscape is going to change. So before we start that, I want to give you a very good introduction so that you will never forget how important this is, right? And then when it comes to strategic level examination, then you know the subject is closely about corporate governance, financial reporting together. So there, the board of directors have significant responsibility in terms of oversight that these, for example, carbon accounting, right? So now you are going to learn during next 1 hour plus a corporate accounting standards for carbon accounting. What do you mean? How do you account for scope 1, 2, 3, carbon taxes? What's going to happen in times to come, right? Now when you marry the sustainability standards with IFRS, how are you going to do that? How are you going to leverage on various other frameworks like GRI, which are widely used in Sri Lanka, right? So if you look at more specifically, because this subject is corporate governance, from board of directors perspective, you see the oversight role. Oversight means like supervisory role of the board. When it comes to board of directors, how are they going to monitor SRRO? Now this is like a buzzword. What is SRRO? Climate change risk, all of that. So now don't worry about any of this learning outcome. Why? At the end of this session, you will see that the great news is, like I said, one condition. You can be very distracted, because the danger of online, those who are joining online, the danger is that if you are distracted, you will not learn. But if you are with me, you will, this is going to be the starting session that you are going to embrace right? One of the highly demanded new piece of knowledge for chartered accountants around the world, and more than chartered accountants, the board of directors. There are many legal cases around the world about greenwashing. Now these carbon accounting, the emission, things like that, now when it's going to connect to financial statements, right? If company just claim that we are a net zero company, right, all these new words you will learn, right? Now like we find in audited accounts, accounts are qualified. Now this is going to be a hot subject. How are you going to audit these new information? S2 standard is all about climate change. For example, emission is a big topic there. Scope 1, 2, 3 is going to be a very big topic. Scope 3, how are you going to capture your emission of your suppliers, right? According to this corporate accounting standards for greenhouse gas emission. These are the topics that we are going to talk during the next 1 hour plus. Are you ready? So now only I am going to start. But I just emphasize that you need to be with me during the next 1.5 hours. While the session is recorded, I am sure many will be benefited because this is absolutely new knowledge. So, at the start, I will show this list to you and see any of these are you able to explain. And this is the essence of this lecture. And if you know this, you are able to answer those exam questions by doing little more practicing, right? Little more application and reading. And if you are a very diligent students, I also like you to now I saw these books are available, it's printed and available. Of course, when we talk about sustainability, we should not buy printouts, but open book examination, you can take these books. But now, if you can download and have it with me, because at the end of this lecture, I will ensure that while it is a very short lecture, it is carefully designed so that you will get most out of it, what is inside these two standards. And in future, there will be S3, 4, 5 and so on. Like other IFRSs, this will marry together. So, now my challenge to you, this same slide I am showing as the last slide of this session. And then I am sure if you are going to be with me, you will learn them. What are those? SRRO, right? CRRO, net zero SBTI, greenhouse gas emission, scope 1, 2, 3 emission, transition and physical risk, climate resilience and scenario planning, the concept of proportionality. This is going to be tested in the exam. They have very clearly given understanding about proportionality concept. Proportionality means one size doesn't fit for all. We are a small company. How can we spend millions of money to do all of that? Don't worry. Do what you can do, right? So that recognizes your size. There is a relief given because this is going to be mandatory for 2025. There are some relief given in the standard, be aware. Climate first, chronic and acute risk. What are these words? Impact. Now this is critical. And during next 10 minutes you will learn this. Impact materiality, financial materiality, double materiality, right? And then these famous words, governance, strategy, risk management, target and metrics. This is the core structure of S1 standard. Paris Agreement, what is 1.5? 1.5 Celsius target means what? What are IPCC? What are IEA? This jargon you will know at the end of this lecture. That's the good news, right? So not only that, you will also learn these new standards, IFRS sustainability family, SASB, integrated reporting, TCFD, CDSB and so on. While this is IFRS, there is another set of standard in Europe. There are several Parliament acts that have already been passed. You know, even Sri Lankan companies exporting to Europe, now they are struggling because they have to sometimes disclose carbon emission of a product to make sure certain requirements are met, right? Things like that. So on top of that, you see corporate governance here, right? Why? Because end of the day, this is about one thing. Businesses are there not just to make money. The profit that you know, right? There are another two P's, right? You will wonder by looking at the next slide that I am going to show. So we need to be very concerned about, while organization make profit, leave the planet for future, right? Protect people. So this is the triple bottom line: people, planet. So this is all about the sustainability standards. However, because this is under IFRS, IFRS is more worried about companies, how if planet is going to be warmer, right? If they are going to be unusual, right, flooding and other natural calamities, company cannot survive. So then IFRS is more keen on that SRRO. Now what is SRRO? It's sustainability related risk, but the great news is not only risk, you can make money out of it, right? Now I am happy that there is no plastic bottle here, right? I don't usually bring, because nowadays, especially Gen Z, if you look at, they are willing to pay a premium price if product is sustainable, right? The carbon footprint of a product is low, right? And it is made from a renewable source of energy, and it is made ethically. So there is a market for that, and there are many research being done on this. So now you know what, I mean, you heard what it is, but we haven't still learned anything, right? So moving on, I said you will wonder by looking at this news. Now this lecture is going to be interesting, by the way, not boring, right? So why it's not coming? This news, you can first of all see, what is the date? 2nd November, today, right? 12 o'clock. The news, we can't laugh at it, unfortunate news. How deadly flooding in Spain. Now this part of the Spain, can you see here the calamity? This happened few days before this session, right? You won't believe, within a day the rainfall is such, it is the rainfall that's going to happen within a year, right? අවුරුද්දක වැස්ස එක පාරටම වැස්ස එක දවසක, right? You can see 1 year rain in one day, more than 200 dead. The flood destroyed bridges, right? Covered towns with mud, leaving cut off communities without water, food and electricity. Why? Now see, I mean, we can find many such incidents, but why it is happening? See, the scientists comment, the warming climate is also likely to have the warm, right, likely to contribute to the severity of the flood. Specifically, the experts say that they have investigated that the global warming has resulted in extreme weather. Now you can Google, right, the global risk report by World Economic Forum for the next 10 years as well as immediate 3 years, what are the top risks? You will see the extreme weather, things like that, right? Now this is the results of those risks, right? So now, if you look at more details into this, why this is happening, and this is another expert's view on this. In recent years, scientists have warned that the waters of this particular sea are rapidly warming, right? Climbing as much as, now I am drawing your attention to this 5 Celsius. Because we are going to talk about Paris Agreement 1.5 2030 targets. What is that? If we don't control the rise of temperature up to this level, I mean, our survival in this planet is going to be at risk. That's what we are talking. Now imagine here it's going to be 5 C above the normal. A hot air can hold more moisture. So what will happen, right? The hot air can hold more moisture, the potential for catastrophic downpours rises. No doubt about it, right? This explosive, it's like a, you know, while we are here in a, the Ukraine, the world war that is happening in different parts of the world, this is another war from the nature, because maybe nature is reacting to human action, who are greedy and selfish sometimes. Some of them may not think about, you can make money by running a company. The emission that you release, the greenhouse gas emission. Now, for your general knowledge, you need to do a basic study of various, this carbon, methane and other type of greenhouse gas. If it is going to be more, how it is going to give rise to this global warming scenario. Right now, see, I explained to you, this is why. And again, I am interested today, I saw this paper. What is the date? 3rd November, Irida. Ada Irida, right? So, මේ කියවලා බලන්න. උණුසුම වැඩි වෙලා, right? Amazon ගංගාව හිඳිලා. So, imagine, right? ලෝකේ විශාලතම වනාන්තරයක් වෙන Amazon, right? විශාලම වැසි වනාන්තරයක් ගංගාව දැන් හිඳිලා යනවා. ඇයි මෙහෙම වෙන්නේ? So, this is what we are talking. So, this is why for accountants who are accounting for money, it's very important to account for people and planet, because we need to live. Our generations, your future generation, your kids should live, and that is the context of these standards. Coming to Sri Lanka, you see, we are generally in top 10, right? Ranked among top 10 according to climate index as one of the vulnerable country. Now very soon I'll come to standards, so don't worry, you will think I'm doing a climate lecture. If I don't give this perspective to you, the IFRS S1 and S2 like Greek. This is real world. We are facing this, right? Climate is about climate risk management. While we can manage risk in the organization, the biggest risk which we will struggle to manage is climate change risk. So what are these? Like I already spoke, the changes in the ocean, the water, sea level rises, right? Storms, floods, fire, heat, right? So these are the risks from a climate perspective. And then the next question is also to ask, how do we manage this risk? Now I will ask this question before we start S1 and S2, why the board of directors, everybody speak about this. Again, you will see these numbers. The risk in terms of dollars, the value at risk because of climate change is going to range from 4.2 trillion to 43 trillion. Because I just showed you what happens in 29th October in Spain. Imagine if you calculate the value, how much it is dollar value. Now that is why, if such events were to happen more and more, this can vary from 4.2 to 43 trillion. TCFD. Now you will learn TCFD in a little while. TCFD is one of the famous framework that has been there for many, many years, used around the world for climate change, used in this governance strategy risk and matrix model, which was converted later to content of S1 and S2, right? The architecture, TCFD architecture. TCFD is one of the highly recognized framework. And now if you look at from corporate governance angle, the directors are really thinking, because if you look at the largest fund in the world, now some of those statistics I haven't brought to this presentation in the interest of time, globally, right, the largest investors like Larry Fink, the largest fund in the world, right, the hedge funds, the institutional shareholders are putting a lot of pressures for companies. Look here, now larger shareholders are not individuals or company, it is a pool of investment. Those are institutional shareholders, right? Now they really push, right, for companies to make sure that you are running the company in a responsible manner. So therefore, they can even change board members. You can see here, look at here, the ExxonMobil company, the board members were changed, right? Or some board members were removed to appoint ESG, I think this is slow, ESG minded board members. Now look at in 21 District Court of Hawke issued a ruling that Shell must reduce their net carbon emission by 45% by 2030, right. So, it is about emission pressure, right. And then there are other companies here. Around the world there are more than 1,500 legal cases for greenwashing. So, we will speak about greenwashing now. This is a famous, one of the largest company, and they are changing board of directors to appoint ESG mind directors, right. So, now we are going to come to S1 and S2. This is very, very important point. CRRO, you can see the word, but I will explain in more detail in few minutes. Climate related risk and opportunity, according to climate scientists, right, the emission we need to cut at least by 85%, right, below 2000 level by 2050. Now imagine, you can calculate your age by 2050, right. No, we are in 2024, 2050. Your age. By that time, if temperature were to go rise about 2, right, then our survival is in question. The temperature rise above this, right, will produce increasingly unpredictable, dangerous impact to people and ecosystems, right. And the existing government policies will not sufficient to address this problem. And if you look at Sri Lanka in particular, these are our targets. You need to be aware that we have a target to reduce our emission by 14%. We are going to be carbon neutral. Again, you need to understand what is carbon neutral, right. So, what is net zero carbon neutral when it comes to, for example, your energy generation from thermal versus solar, right. Can you achieve net zero? Can you balance out your purchase energy, right, using thermal or from CEB through your the solar generation and achieve net zero by setting off? That's the idea, right. When it comes to carbon neutral, you may even want to purchase and do that. Now, what we read is coming from one important accounting standard which we spoke, but that is not IFRS or accounting standard, but that's a different accounting standard, and that is the carbon accounting standard which I spoke earlier. So, now this one I want to draw some more attention in this, probably it will come about this standard, but before we go there, this is where Sri Lanka is, right. You see our temperature rise, average temperature, right, 27 to 22. I mentioned to you at the start of my lecture 1.5 target, right, because this Paris agreement is where globally there is a consensus agreement that let us control the temperature rise maximum up to 1.5. So, according to Sri Lanka, now we are trying to control, right, but we are one of the vulnerable country according to this index. Now, I will show you again, because when we speak about S1 and S2, this knowledge is critical, otherwise, like I said, it's going to be Greek. What are you talking? Now, look at this. This is an interesting site. You can even check in Sri Lanka how will be the temperature, the different scenarios. 0.5 scenarios. Now, climate related scenario is a section in S2 standard, S1 and S2. Now, without practical understanding, if you just read, you may not understand. Now, see here 1.5, I have clicked 1.5. That means temperature rise 1.5. You can scan, even in Sri Lanka map, we can put and scan here to understand, this red zone means in future, this predicts the future, right. Days above 32 Celsius, right, that's going to be extremely warmer, and then can companies or people can work there, what are the implications? So, that's where now climate scenarios have come. See, reaching 1.5 is likely by 2030, and the probability, if you take this scenario, right, and the probability of stopping warming below 1.5 is almost 0, right. That means temperature is going to go above 1.5. So, now it's very, very important, because I really recommend you to write few things. At the end of this lecture, have one clean page of this is what I learned. Please write, when it comes to climate risk management, you can do two things. Now, can you avoid this? You need to adapt. Now, can I stop the flood now that Spain event? Even the people are now complaining, the warning came at the last minute, right? Only few hours. Suddenly people have realized the water level has come up to this, right? I mean, there is very short time. So what I want to say, we can't avoid this. That's one of the strategies, adaptation, right? Climate adaptation. Now that means if there is a flood or very hudhud or natural disaster comes, you are resilient. You can change operation. I'll show you now in this presentation. I'm going to talk about Sri Lanka companies like Dialog. They have early adopted standards. Haley's. So there are a lot of cases that I will cover and international cases as well. So what I want to say, please write two strategies. One is climate adaptation. The other one is mitigation. Adaptation means, okay, this will happen. If it happens, I am going to be ready. I have alternative. I can switch my operation from location A to B and run my business. So that is about your business continuity if this scenario happens. But in terms of actually reducing emission and saving the planet, what is your duty? That is where you mitigate. That is where you account for your scope 1. Scope 1 means what you burn. Now, if you are running your generators with diesel, that is scope 1 emission. I am now explaining to you scope 1. What you buy from CEB, right? The purchased, right? Then you have to look at your scope 2, and then the goods that you purchase, you are purchasing some material from a supplier whose emission is very high. So that's your scope 3. Look at your value chain. Now, scope 1, 2, 3. As a company, are you actually reduce your emission, direct and indirect? Now all of your employees are coming using separate vehicle, right? So that is emission. Be mindful about it. The air travel, all of that, all are part of carbon accounting, right? So now climate risk mitigation, I am making you a very big point. There is no slide here, but remember two things that I said. How to manage climate change risk, adaptation, to prepare. That's climate resilience. If something happens, I am ready with a backup plan. Secondly, I am genuinely going to reduce global warming. I am supporting Paris Agreement 2030. I am going to be net zero by 2030 or 40. I am going to reduce my, when I say I am company setting a target, they have given SBTI commitment. Please write this word SBTI. So that is science-based target. Internationally, you can give you a carbon inventory. This is my carbon emission. They will validate and give a pledge, right? Target that now you can see a lot of newspapers, this company says we are going to be net zero by 2020, 30, 40, whatever date. That is really where you are going to contribute in terms of reducing this risk. That is risk mitigation. So we learn those two. Remember IFRS S2, all of this we are going to learn. Now this background knowledge is going to be very, very useful when we discuss. So what makes planet warmer, right? This is a very important slide, and this slide actually captures that standard that I mentioned to you, scope 1, 2, 3 emission. But I'll cover in little detail, but quickly what I explained to you, what you burn, scope 1. So one easy word is what you burn, right? Companies, facilities, companies, vehicles, scope 1. Whereas when you purchase energy from CEB, for example, right, purchase for your use or heating or cooling purpose, so those scope 2. But what is more difficult, there are 15 categories. Let's see, here all 15s are mentioned or not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Look at the value chain, these are upstream. I am purchasing raw material. Let us say I am manufacturing, say you are manufacturing garments and you are purchasing fabric from a textile, from a textile company, and then they are suppliers, they are purchasing yarn, right? So for example, they are the purchase goods from my suppliers. How can I calculate their emission, right? And you can see the business travel, everything here. Transport, now this is upstream of the value chain, as you know. That is a part of your upstream, downstream is your distribution, sales, that part of it. Now there again transportation, how your products are going to the consumer. Right now you see here there are 8 categories. If you put the numbers 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, these are the 15 categories. Now how about the where you invest? You have invested equity investment, but that is a company where emission is very high. When you consolidate, will it come to your balance sheet, carbon accounting? Yes, it may come to your boundaries. So this is what you will learn. This standard is very, very important, and we will cover. At least now you understood scope 1, 2, 3. Why? Now it's very easy for me to cover in a little while the standards, because now you have learned most of the background topics. Please ask questions. Very important, you should ask questions. Now, this is an extremely important slide. The risk that I spoke, climate risk. You know the temperature is going to rise. What happened to Spain? That is a physical risk. Now, where are physical risks? Here, the physical risk is acute. Please make notes. These are very important, extremely important point directly from the standard. Right? Physical risk, acute and chronic. Right? So chronic, long term. Now see what happened in Spain. 29th October did not just happen. Over a period of time it has happened. So the long term change in the weather or the climate, right, long term change may result in such chronic event. Or sometimes certain specific incidents can happen. Those are chronic and acute, right, events. Then there is transition. What is this transition? So I spoke to you Paris Agreement 2030. So the journey of making sure that the temperature won't rise above 1.5, and companies are going to be net zero. So all of these things is about transition to now why net zero target? Some companies said by 2030, because they are saying in times to come we are going to reduce fossil fuel, we are going for more renewable energy sources. Now if you have certain boilers and certain equipments which are to be run using thermal, those machines you need to impair. The moment you say impair, you need to invest your capital, right? So the cash flow is going to be affected, P&L is going to be affected, right? Now the financials are going to be impacted, and that is where SRRO comes, the financial impact. So the transition risk means the risk when you transit to a low carbon economy. What are the type of risks? You know, in some countries the carbon tax is very significant. You will wonder how many dollars Shell is paying for carbon taxes. In Sri Lanka this is not yet there. These may come in future, right? So policy and legal regulation. Now for example, those companies I will show you in Haley's. Now for example, aluminium, when they export, right, or the rubber products. Now some of these things they ask about your carbon footprint of a product. You need to do costing to capture this, right? So those are policy and legal, especially in European Union, right? See the CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Regulations Directive, and under that supply chain due diligence, triple D, due diligence directive has come, right? You need to do that full due diligence. Those are policy. And the technology, you need to invest in new technology. Now look at it, the simple lights. In some companies you see some companies, the green building, there is a green building, this is a green building. No lights, when you walk in only light comes, all sensor driven. This is all about energy optimization. So then you need to get rid of your older technology, and that is a risk, right? And then market, especially huge opportunity. There is a risk as well as opportunity. Now companies like Shell, now if everybody talks about green, people may not buy these petroleum products. The market will collapse. Now people may not like, now you see even in Sri Lanka how the demand for papers have reduced. Some companies, they are Now even when now the bills and all we don't get now. Now those market for this may deteriorate. At the same time, new markets being created for green products, right? You look at Bill Gates' book, Green Premium, right? So the consumers are, many research being done, especially Gen Z, they are willing to pay a premium price than the brand if the product is sustainable, right? So these are very important, that what you are learning now, transition, and read the definition now. And this is examinable. If examiner wants to test this, this is in learning outcomes. Transition risk. So what is the definition? Risk that arise from transition to a lower carbon economy, right? When you transit to a lower carbon economy, your cost may go up, operating cost, or your asset may impair. I already explained to you. New regulation may come. The entity's financial performance could also be affected by shift in consumer demands, right? That's a market risk. And physical risks, one is risks that arise from climate change that can be event driven. Acute physical risks. Acute physical risks arising from weather related events such as storm, flood, drought, right? Heat waves, which happens as an event, it destroyed some location, that's more of acute risk. And then if you look at chronic risk, is about long-term shift in the climate patterns after some time, how the sea level is going to be affected, the productivity, biodiversity, especially now, see, that's where again I'll show you from Haley's how the agribusiness is going to be affected, how yield is going to be affected. Now this long-term change in the climate patterns is going to impact companies, right? So that's, now you have learned it. So it's very, very important that you understand transition risk. This is about IFRS S2, although it is not written the heading. These are the definition, right? The transition to a new low carbon economy, these risks in terms of laws and regulation, consumer preferences, technology shift, things like that. And physical risks are very clear: extreme weather, flood, sea level rise, hurricane, hudhud, right? So those things. And finally, remember, this is a key slide. It's going to impact your financial statements. That is where S1 comes. The word S1 objective is to provide sustainability related financial information. Please write. I'm going to open the standard and show you all this by paragraph. So the next half an hour will be very quickly to run through. Most of that you learn. If I told you at the start, if you are with me, you are going to learn a lot. What did I say? This one standard wants you to produce what? Sustainability related financial disclosures. Please write. Sustainability related financial disclosures. And that main thing is SRRO. I'll show you again this in a slide, then you will understand. So what we learn now is those two. And then this is something I already spoke. If you want to manage climate risk, there are two things: adaptation, what actions you are going to do to build resilience. Resilience means you have a plan. I'll show you how Sri Lankan companies have disclosed this. Mitigation is where you are going to really reduce your emission. That I already covered. So I'm happy I covered it. This is practically how S1 and S2 has been applied. This is not S1 and S2, but this is TCFD. TCFD was there. Like I said earlier, TCFD is very similar. I mean, they have really used TCFD in developing S1 and S2. Now, this is practical applications. When it comes to your annual report, financial statements, you are supposed to explain, quantify the impact of these climate related risks when it comes to S2 standard, because S2 standard is about your climate risk. Remember, now after giving this background, the next half an hour is to carefully study. This is S1, this is S2. So I have made a strong foundation on which you can build on, right? So that's why we are practically going through this case, then we can easily move on. This is Shell annual report. They explain transition risk, transition to a low carbon economy, right? Now we learn transition risk means what is the risk, okay, how their financials are going to be affected, how because the people may not buy petroleum product, lower sales, right? Because they want to reduce or eliminate oil, gas products, and they are moving to renewable energy sources. So that will drop. So they need to now invent, do some innovation. Preferences accordingly, preferences of investors, even bank loan, they may not be able to take, and they may not be able to access to finance. Cost of capital may rise. This is extremely important, because when you identify SRRO, you need to check three things. What are the three things? One thing is access to finance, right? Now your cost of capital, right? And I'll show you all three. Now here both are there, right? Access to finance, increase cost. And this is called your financial prospect. Another word is financial prospect. Now don't worry about this. I am going to show these three again when it comes to S1 standard, right? So SRRO is all about, if you are going to be impacted, your access to finance or cost of capital, then investors, that is why it is IFRS now. Because now the bankers are not going to give loan, you need to disclose this in the accounts, right? They may give you a loan, you might say, look here, we have plans, right? That's where the mitigation comes. So this is Shell regulatory risk, which is a part of transition risk. Look at the numbers. They are paying 493 million, right? Cost of compliance with EU emission trading scheme. So that's the cost. And then Shell annual carbon cost exposure is expected to increase over the next decade because of evolving carbon regulation, because the regulations are becoming tougher. And then the cost rise is going to be 8.8 billion, right? And around 1.5 billion in 2032. So remember, they are not talking 1 year here. That's one thing very important about climate risk. You need to define your time horizon within 1 year, within 5 years, 10 years, and so on. And this is litigation. I already explained to you the legal case where, now this is very important because you understand scope 1, 2, 3 now, at least little understanding, right? So now the court wanted their consolidated emission, right? Reduce your scope 1, 2, 3 emission by 45%. First of all, you need to understand your scope 1, 2, 3, right? In 2019, scope 1 emission from consolidated subsidiaries, 86 million tons. See, 86 million tons consolidated emission. Right. So now we have a very solid background, and with that we are better able to understand or study this standard. So first thing, students, remember corporate governance. This is connected to governance. From exam perspective also, if you look at in Sri Lanka, new corporate governance code, I am showing you companies should include the impact of sustainability or ESG risk and opportunity in the business plan, strategy, all of that. And then here, company should have a process to assess and manage sustainability and ESG impact on the company, right? So now I'm going to come to a very important concept, and after this we are directly moving to specifically, I'm going to take the standard and get into some of the critical aspects. So far, before I go there, if you have questions, please, because for those who join live, please don't wait till the last moment, you can raise your questions. Right? Now let us move away from accounting standard. Look at a business, the concept of, for 2 minutes, the concept of triple bottom line that I explained. As a responsible business, you need to create value not only to you, create value to the society, then you will be very successful business. So that purpose you need to understand two things. Again, extremely important concept that you are going to learn during next 5 minutes. Please write. What you are going to learn is 3 things. Please write: financial materiality, impact materiality from GRI, and double materiality from ESRS. That's what you are going to learn. Now there, like I said, look at practically every business. What you learn in integrated reporting, 6 capital, you can't make money only by having financial capital, you need natural capital. Now there, inside out, I want you to write this. Inside out. What is inside out? Business impacting the society. Take the most simple example, you are not cleaning your wastewater and releasing. So it goes to a river, it's going to affect the ecosystem, right? So that business impact society, right? This is very much impact materiality, right? I think this is not working. And second one, is working. So note this carefully, impact materiality. Then inside out. How about outside in? IFRS is very keen on outside in. Why? Now imagine I'll take a very simple example, Coca-Cola or water bottles, right? I don't have water bottle now, plastic bottles. Now these water companies, they are mainly relying on water, even Coca-Cola, right? So water is critical. If you find that water scarcity, water is not available, the drinking water, they can't now directly, it will affect their cash flow. I said 3 things, right? Earlier, cash flow, access to, I said 2 things. Third thing I didn't say. The first thing is cash flow, access to finance, cost of capital. Now if you don't have water, you can't run. So IFRS is very keen on what? Outside in. Is there anything in the society or the environment which is going to impact your cash flow, your financials? So that is outside in, right? External factors, and that is financial materiality in IFRS. But when it comes to now, then remember definition, financial materiality is from IFRS is anything that is going to affect your ability to create value. So water not available, now suddenly one of your suppliers stops supplying because that supplier cannot continue. There is a drought in that season. මං කියවන Amazon දැන් හිඳිලා කියලා newspaper එකේ write other paper එකේ. එතකොට not a laughing, not something to laugh, but these natural resources really impacting the business, and that IFRS is very keen because you can't create value. So that's financial impact materiality, popularly using GRI standards. The impact is they are very keen on how company is going to impact the society, like my example of releasing wastewater, very simple example, right? So double materiality is about you are looking both impact and financial material, and that is the framework in Europe. Please write ESRS is focusing on double materiality. So now I can gain entry to IFRS S1 and S2. So IFRS family, IFRS standards are based on several other standards, by the way. IFRS cannot just develop S1. They have borrowed and married many other frameworks and standards. So mainly from IFRS perspective, the integrated reporting is now part of IFRS S1 and S2. I'll explain the connectivity, and SASB standard, Sustainability Accounting Standard Board. There are 77 industry specific standards. Now when we talk about S1, we talk about all those 77 standards. Don't worry, if you are in bank, or if you are in hotel, or if you are in apparel, you need to apply only that standard. There is an industry standard in SASB, and IFRS says if you want to identify SRRO, go to the SASB standard and identify, which means when you study S1, you need to also study about SASB standards and also CDSB. So these things helps you to identify. So these are more of investor standards, right? Whereas these GRI is a more of a stakeholder driven standard. So that's the alphabet soup. This is a soup, alphabet soup. You have ESG, TCFD, IS, OLA, it's a soup. So now when it comes to S1 and S2, important point is, remember, they haven't just developed this standard. They are borrowing from many other standards, especially this TCFD. Same principles have been used in IFRS S1 and S2, and also IFRS S1 and S2 recommends, like I said, use SASB, and also integrated reporting. If you are using, you can easily connect integrated reporting when you identify what? SRRO. So now we are going to the most essential part of our lecture, and that is to directly understand, based on the background knowledge that we have, SRRO, right? So the SASB standard also I will cover as we go through the S1 and S2. This I just want to emphasize, I already said at the start, the board of directors are mainly interested about this topic. Why? It is the duty of the board not just to make profit. Don't make profit by creating problem to people, right? Give power to the people and protect the planet, and that is a board responsibility. As the governance board has to see how targets are set to reduce emission, how emission is calculated, whether SRR or risk are discussed at the board meeting, what is your strategy short term, medium to long term, right, in terms of reducing the impact. Remember, I spoke about this word resilient. Your climate risk, how resilient you are, and then how you manage those risks, and how you measure your scope 1, 2, 3. So whenever we speak about S1 and S2, we speak about 4 things, that is governance, strategy, risk and metrics. Always those 4. This is considered as co-content of S1. Co-content. What is that? Co-content. What are the co-contents? Governance, strategy, risk management, targets and metrics, which we are going to discuss. Right? Because you have the basic knowledge. So GRI, I can speak another 2 hours, but be aware. Why? The examiner says you need to aware about different frameworks that are there. So only thing about GRI is, remember, the GRI is based on impact materiality, whether your balance sheet is affected or not, anything as a company that you are doing, if it is going to impact the society, you need to be aware about it. So that is where GRI standards comes. So the GRI 1, 2, 3, these are general standards, especially this materiality. Material topics means significant topic. Now, there I will give you a good example you will never forget. Now I am asking you, if it is a bank, do you think water is a material topic for bank? Material means based on the business model, you are impacting water in a big way. Yes or no? No. But if it is a manufacturing company, or like I said, Coca-Cola or other beverage manufacturer, the water is a material topic, right? So like that, a company that has, say, apparel industry, many employees, so then child labor, forced labor, all these labor related topics are material. But right now there is no IFRS, there is only S1 and S2, labor related one will come in future, right? So but GRI has all of these material topics based on your business model. Are you going to impact the water, air, people, whatever? So you can, there are many topics. Out of those topics you need to figure out what are the, so I'll show you this slide. These are the topics, topic standards. So when you do a study based on your business model, you will tick off, for my company, I am a manufacturer, I am going to tick off, this is my materiality level, so I am generating a lot of waste. In my company there is a chance for anti-corruption, tax is a material sensitive topic, energy is definitely yes, and the emission is a relevant topic, environmental compliance, I employ many, the labor force is significant, forced labor, risk is there, occupational safety, non-discrimination, labor relations, right? So these things matters. So these topics like health and safety also matters. So now this is my material topic. So based on this, I am going to actually capture and quantify and measure and report based on GRI standards. So please write this word, GRI materiality assessment, based on the topic standards that you can do the materiality assessment. Before that you need to study your stakeholders, right? Who are your stakeholders? Because the stakeholders, the impact company is going to create. So now within 3 minutes, 4 minutes, you learn little bit but very big point about GRI standards. And because this discussion is not on GRI, but remember, according to the exam, or even practically, most Sri Lankan companies follow GRI standards. Right. Then ESRS. තාම ඉවර නෑ list එක නේ. Right. So like that, like GRI, ESRS has gone more than IFRS, because IFRS has issued only one standard, S2. S1 is the foundation. Now what is the foundation? Governance strategy, risk management, that framework. Not only that, I'll cover during next, I said 1.5 hours, right? So maybe we have to go at least another half an hour, right? But that half an hour is the essence of this discussion, right? Now only you are going to score, your knowledge will go like this now. The ability to answer exam questions going to increase, right? So now this next half an hour you need to be very much attentive. So ESRS, don't worry, those are not going to be tested, but what I want to say, ESRS is again like GRI based on double materiality. What? Double materiality means, now do you know, inside out as well as outside in. You need to really understand this. What is inside out? Companies disturbing the society, right? Outside in, society's impact in your value creation. That is financial materiality. IFRS says sustainability related financial information, or SRRO, right? So that's about it. So ESRS has gone more. So they have climate change, pollution, water and marine resources, biodiversity. This is going to come in soon in IFRS. And human capital is another standard the IASB is working. Right, so these are that. Then now I am very happy to show this to you. The top jargon list. Now I said this you should have learned now. More than this you would have learned, no? Because this is what I thought by now in the lecture you have what is highlighted, you have learned. The risk of transition to a low carbon economy, physical risk, scope 1, 2, 3 also we learned, briefly at least, SRRO, some knowledge. Chronic and acute risk we learned. Impact, materiality, financial material. I said at the end of this lecture you will learn most of it. Governance strategy risk, learn but not in much detail, right? So let's move on. Moving on. Now it's extremely important. I am coming to S1 and S2. So if you look at S1 and S2, S1 is overall disclosure requirement. It's like the foundation standard that set the framework. If any company wants to standard their sustainability related financial information, put the governance structure, make sure that it is connecting to strategy, it is connecting to risk management, and start target and matrix reporting. Those are the 4 things, right? And then S2, if you do that, now go and identify your climate related risks. I am happy that we have discussed again terminology of what are the climate related risks, your transition risk and physical risk, but now we will discuss more detail here. Now these slides are extremely important directly from the standard. By paragraph, if you have the standard now open, I am directly putting what is in the standard, critical one. Why IFRS S1 standard is to produce, look at this keyword, it's about disclosure of sustainability related financial information. What is one? Sustainability related financial information means one thing, and that is about SRRO. And I told you SRRO is about 3 things. What are the 3 things? Sustainability related risk and opportunities is about 3 things. Those 3 are highlighted here. You can see that. Sorry. What are the 3? Cash flow. Sustainable. Now see again, carefully look at disclosure of sustainability related financial information means that you are disclosing your risk and opportunity. How do you know they are risk and opportunity? Because they are going to affect 3 things. Your cash flow, because now see Shell, the demand will drop, your cash flow will reduce. The bankers may be reluctant to give the loan, your cost of capital will rise. These 3 things will short term, medium term, long term, and that you need to report in annual report. Plus, you need to report another 4 things. That's about your governance. That's where this connects to S1. Not S1. What is S1 here? I'm talking S1 as strategic level ABR paper, right? SL1 has governance, right? Corporate governance. So governance, strategy, risk management, matrix. So that you need to disclose. To whom we are disclosing this? Primary users. Who are the primary users? Now GRI talks about stakeholders, but IFRS talks about We are reporting to investors, lenders and creditors, right? And these are general purpose financial statements which are going to be part of your financial statements, right? Now, this is the standard. Now, with the knowledge that we have, we can look at the objectives. Easily we can understand now what is the scope. Conceptual foundation means the normal accounting standard, fair presentation, neutrality, all of that jargon which is in normal accounting standard. But the core content here is about governance, strategy, risk management, target, those 4 things. In addition, the standard gives us guidance on what? Because remember the standard, if somebody asks me, give me one word for S1, I can tell you it's about SRRO because that's the objective, right? Now, with this SRRO, I need to connect this to governance, strategy, risk and targets. This is the standard, right? So, therefore, when I give S1, when I do SRRO, I need to explain this as well, right? So, to do that, what is the main sources of guidance? SASB standards that we are going to look at how SASB can be applied. And then there are other, for example, if you want, you may use, company shall use SASB standard but may use GRI. GRI is not really critical or mandatory, right? So, there are these are general things, disclosure about location, things like that. So, the key things, if you go into those key things now, scope of the standard. Remember, this definition is very important. Sustainability related risk and opportunity that could reasonably affect the entity's prospect. The key word here, please go and now imagine the power of this lecture if you have the 2 standards now at the end of this, because now we have really good foundation. Most of the things you can now highlight, and then at the end you can check the examiner's learning outcome to what level you know. Now, I am specially for those who are sitting for S1, S1 now I am SL1, right. I will do additional probably lecture when the pre-scene is released with case studies, how to write answers, right. So, then but this session gives you most of the foundational knowledge even in application. I am going to show you some cases quickly in the next half an hour, right. Now, the key word is prospects. Then prospects means 3 things. What are the 3 things? Any SRRO that's going to affect my cash flow, access to finance, cost of capital. Don't ever forget those fundamentals. Then the objective of the standard, I am happy I have done it, right. Objective is what? To disclose SRRO. What are SRRO? Anything that is going to affect entity's ability to generate cash flow, right. So, that is connected to company's value chain. Now, I am going to show you very, very important, extremely important piece of this lecture. Now, from where this SRRO comes, remember this is extremely important. I don't use the word extremely important all the time. From where SRRO comes? It comes from entity's dependency. What is the key word? Dependency on 2 things. As entity, you are depending on water, resources, you are depending on supply in China, relationship, dependency on resources and relationship. If that breaks, that's going to affect your cash flow. 3 things, no? That's called sustainability related risk and opportunity. Now, I will show you with pictures how this happens, right. So, now look at this is where the S1 connects to integrated reporting, because this SRRO, they use this word. If I go back, I think that was mentioned in the previous slide. Here I didn't know attention to this. SRO comes from here. I told you dependency on resources and relationship. This is outside in. I need water, I need air, I need that supplier. I am depending on people, right. So, for example, if you are a milk company and you need cows, right, I am depending on them, the farmers. So, SRRO comes from 2 sources. One is the dependency, the other one is impact you create, impact created by the company. So this is very, very important. If somebody asks from where SRRO comes, dependency on resources and relationship, the other one is impact. If you are very thorough with sustainability standard, this is the essence that you must know. And now I will show you this with pictures how this can be illustrated through integrated reporting, because integrated reporting, you know, if I take more time to explain, I have to extend this lecture by another 2 hours, right? But the point is, this SRO, the previous wording, what did I say earlier? SRRO comes from where? Dependencies on resources and relationship and the impact created by the entity, and that is the same thing in integrated reporting called capital. What is natural capital? Entity's dependency on natural capital. What is human capital? The relationship capital. So now these words, dependency and relationship, entity's dependency on resources and relationship, is the same term used in integrated reporting for capital. That is why if you are using integrated reporting, you can easily, you see, by referring to the same, this is the point, value creation process, a company will be better placed to explain investor how business model and value creation can be affected. So that's using this S1 and S2. I think there is, I want to show you this picture on what we discussed earlier. This word, resources and relationship, again same words. Remember this, resources and relationship, that entity depends, right? And impact entity creates. So now here I am showing through pictures. Entity depends on water, no water, cash flow is affected, you can't run. Now this is a $1 million problem called, you can Google and see, zinc and cotton. There is a regulation, if you look at in Sri Lanka, most of Sri Lankan apparel or wherever, whenever it is going to US, they say don't buy from this region. There are regulations. So then that can create a risk, right? So dependency and relationship, this is dependency and relationship. Now this is the impact you are creating. So these are relevant when it comes to SRRO identification. Then, so how do you identify SRRO? This is very important. Identify SRRO. This is another principle you will learn called proportionality. You don't need to pay millions to consultant. If examiner asks what is the proportionality concept which is examinable, your answer is do what you can. Reasonable and supportable information without spending more money is called proportionality, right? And how do you do that? Reasonable and supportable information means look at what has happened in the past, the current, the forecast, other information that you have. What is reasonable, supportable you can give. I'll give you example, right? Now, what do you mean by undue cost? Undue cost means wherever possible use your available information, right? Now, for example, if you want to do SRRO, if you are already doing the risk management in the company, try to use those risk management data. The risk department may already know some of the environmental risk, only thing fine, CFO has never spoken to the person, CFO has never had a chat with ESG head. Those information already there. So the proportionality principle means without undue cost, use reasonable data, available data. Now one of the big thing IFRS asks, do a scenario planning and see in another 5 years time, what is the climate risk in Sri Lanka? Is it 1.5 or 2 scenario? You know now what is 1.5 or 2. Now that scenario analysis you can spend some millions of money and bring consultants and do. But the IFRS says, no, don't do that. You use IEA or IPCC, start with that. But next year you can improve that. So that's the beauty, right? So therefore the standard is very practical, right? In identifying SRRO, see, the entity can use the available information and use the guidance in para 54 and 55. My gosh, now we have to go to para 54 and 55. If you have the standard, go there. And now I am showing that. This is the guidance. Para 55 says shall. If you want to identify SRO, you shall refer to this standard. You may refer to other standard. Shall means SASB standard, right? I already said shall refer to what standard? SASB. So IFRS, learning about IFRS S1 and S2 means you are also learning about SASB standards. There are 77 standards. For exam, don't study 77, but understand the principle of SASB. And then when it comes to one is to identify SRRO, you need to refer to SASB standard, and also there are entity may refer to other standard like CDSB, that is on the water. So like that there are other standards that you can use. And then when it comes to identifying other disclosures required by this standard, again you need to refer to SASB standard. And then entity may refers to other standard which is given in Appendix C. Appendix C has GRI and ESRS standards which is focusing on double materiality. I know it is very difficult to absorb this lecture. That is why I am saying I wanted you to make some notes, right? Because something that you have to learn by spending several months, I am trying to get the essence, substance and give it to you, right? Right. So, therefore, this slide is very important because that connects to the SASB standards, and then at least by now you have idea about, I will show you through example how SASB can be used, very simple. Right. Now, I will take again example from apparel industry. If you want, we can take from hotel industry as well. Now, if I want to identify SRRO in apparel industry, I am now going to SASB website. There is something called Materiality Finder, you can now do it. Then there is one industry called apparel consumer, if I am not mistaken, apparel, consumer product and accessories industry. Many industries can be covered. It can be used by brand, popular brands, you know, in the world, right? And the brands like Levi's, whatever names that comes to your mind. And also it can be used by footwear. So that standard. Why I am using that standard? Because I want to identify my industry is that what are the topics I need to disclose in the annual report and what are my SRRO. These topics helps me to identify SRRO. Then what are the metrics, the numbers I need to report. So this standard will give me. So I am going to go to, now I open the standard, this is the standard for apparel industry. Now they say I need to talk about raw material sourcing. If you look at this whole apparel industry, depends on fabric, yarn, these cottons and things like that. So then from where this is sourced, and previously I showed you now that China problem, right? I mean there are laws and regulation, the allegation there is that this region use forced labor, don't buy from them, right? And then if any particular material use extensive amount of carbon without natural thing, that is a dangerous material, right? It consumes lot of, it harms the environment, the fabric that is used in the clothes that you wear. So that they define as priority raw material. See the word, amount of priority raw material that you are purchasing. Are you going to use friendly, environmentally friendly material or dangerous material, right? The chemical usage. Now this list is already given. How SASB knows about our industry or your industry? Because they have done a lot of research in this industry, these are the risks. So the topic list is about risk, right? That's where SASB can help you. And then IFRS S1 and S2 also has the materiality concept, but which is not just the, you know, typically financial auditors or those who are doing auditing, they to look at the turnover and take 0.5%, 5% from profit. No, this materiality is little beyond. Now the IASB is already in the process of developing guideline for materiality, but for now it's more largely qualitative. When it comes to materiality, I don't need to much explain that, that's not too much is not expected in this area, but we understood the concept of financial materiality and impact materiality. Remember, this materiality is the same definition used in accounting. Any information if you omit, now see your carbon emission you have manipulated in such a way that it's going to affect users' decision before they invest, they look at it. Same materiality concept is applicable. So I skip that because we don't need to discuss that in more detail. Now case study about SRRO. Now whatever we discuss in theory, we'll look at practically. This is Halis. So one of their main business is synthetics, you know, these gloves, the deep products, right? the synthetic latex based household and medical gloves that they produce. So they have said, now these numbers are very important, they are carbon footprint, right? They have explained scope 1 and 2. This is 24 numbers and 23 numbers, renewable energy, and here there is a note to say that product carbon footprint, they need to assess each product the carbon footprint using product life cycle accounting and reporting. Now when the goods are going to European Union, you need to probably give this information. Now in the annual report you can go and see, this is how they have explained SRRO. SRRO, see this glove business, now this is a very good example. Implication of adverse weather patterns including variability in rainfall patterns and temperature on the rubber supply. So that is going to affect their cash flows, right? So that they have explained as a risk. Now then they are breaking this as a short-term risk, shortage in natural rubber and sharp price increase going to affect your accounts or the cash flows. And 1 to 5 years, after 5 years what will happen, right? If mitigation measures are not adopted on climate change, remember this word climate risk mitigation and adaptation that we spoke. And then they are explaining transition risk, shift to a low carbon economy also we discuss, increased stringent regulation that will come, and are they ready? And already there are regulations relevant to them. They say 1 to 5 years. Regulation in Europe, right? Deforestation Act is there in Europe now. Now for example, if you are producing rubber, they need to, if they find that deforestation, right? If there is a deforestation and if you are producing rubber, then you are in trouble. So you need to find out that rubber is grown, right, from an area without any deforestation. This is a regulation. And then here is agribusiness. Similarly, now in same, 140 odd companies, right? Now they have each sector, they have explained how SRRO is applicable to them, right? This is another example, very similar, how the SRRO due to the climate change, the agribusiness, the volatility in rainfall, precipitation levels is going to impact their productivity and as a result their cash flows. Now when it comes to exam from specially SL1 ABR paper, Advanced Business Reporting, the examiner wants you to know what is the role of the board of directors in SRRO? What are the type of frameworks that are there which companies can use? We already spoke about GRI, SASB, you have now fair understanding, and then you need to know this core content about governance strategy, risk and strategy, how do we apply to a scenario, right? And then how to apply climate related disclosure, especially physical risk that we discuss now, climate related transition risk and opportunity, again this part we discuss. And finally, transitional relief that is available for Sri Lankan companies, right? What is the paced approach? Now that means Sri Lanka Institute is not going to say all the companies this is applicable. Gradually 2025, the last slide I have, 2025, next year this is applicable for top 100 companies, then other companies, like that, step by step. Transitional provision means that, right? Then this is very, very important slide because I am summarizing its one core content in one slide for the next 5 minutes. So time is little extending, and I am sure those who are really eager to learn from the start, those who join live, you are there. You know the value of this session. This has the knowledge that you can learn in 6 months, but I am trying to give you the essence. But don't think this lecture will give you everything. You need to really go into the salient aspects and discuss, right? Most probably I may have to do a little, maybe one on the application, focusing little more. But still I am trying, in this lecture I am trying to give you the essence of both standard as I promised, right? So there are, next 5 minutes is very, very important. I am giving you a 2 minutes break to really breathe, relax, and then come to the next maybe critical 15 minutes to really look at. Now we looked at S1 to a great extent. Especially in S2 also we discuss already risk, but I want to explain the climate related scenario planning and probably transition relief and proportionality principle before we conclude. So 2-3 minutes break. Right, so that's a shorter break because you need to anyway absorb this. So I am very happy to see a lot of interest through social media who are watching or touching this session, more than thousands during the last 1 hour. So that means you are interested, right? Remember, this is something not just for the exam. So this is something globally happening. This is about the humanity, protecting the planet, society, not just to make money. So we need to think about others. So that's the whole spirit, and that is why I am doing this session and inviting all of you without any charge, and you can be benefited. And those who are doing examinations, it's very, very important that you really note the points that I raised, because I am, to a great extent, I have covered the concepts in my presentation. Now I am trying to connect directly to the standards and show you this is how it is there. So now let us come to governance, strategy, risk and target and matrix. That's the foundation in TCFD. Remember earlier I spoke. Now let us say practically from corporate governance or director's perspective. But the good news is, remember this S1 now. දැන් කතා ගොඩාක් කිව්වට අන්තිමට බොහොම සරලව කියන්න පුළුවන්. එන්න මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න ටිකක් අහන්න පුළුවන්. මොකද්ද? S1 ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එකේ කියන්නේ එක ලොකු දෙයක්. මොකක්ද? SRRO, sustainability related risk and opportunities. දැන් කොහෙන්ද ඔය SRRO එන්නේ? If you are an organization, ඔයාගේ තියෙන මොනවාද? Dependencies, you are depending on resources, say water, air, right? And relationship. I need this person, I need people. Your dependencies and relationship is one. One word is dependency. I am circle එක ඇඳ ගන්න dependency. දෙන්නෙක්, resources, relationship. දෙක, impact that you create. This is where SRR. දැන් SRR එකක්ද නැද්ද කියලා දැනගන්න තව ටෙස්ට් එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ තමයි, remember this is IFRS, financial. මේ ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එකේ ඔබ්ජෙක්ටිව් එක මොකද්ද? sustainability related financial information. ඒතොර එහෙම වෙන්නේ අර කාරණා තුන satisfy වෙනකොට. cash flow එකට, access to finance, cost of capital. Remember in Shell annual report I told you they are worried that their revenue is going to drop. Cash flow, the bankers may not give loan. May give because they are a big company, right? Access to finance. Cost of capital may rise. That's the essence of S1. ඒතකොට S1 කවුද බලා ගන්න ඕනේ? මෙන්න මෙයාලා, board of directors, right? එයාලා දන්නේ නැත්නම් මේ වැඩේ කරන්න බෑනේ. So they need to have the knowledge. So how many board members are aware about this subject? Remember, you all as finance community or chartered accountants, the voice of what? The business language, to give the real information to users. Look here, this company is going to collapse in another 10 years. They are going to ruin, they are making money, but they are going to ruin the planet. So the board of directors, you need to educate. Look here, the board is responsible. So S1 standard asks 7 house. How kelane? How board? Board එක මේ ගැන දන්නේ නැත්නම් කොහොමද ඉගෙන ගන්න කියලාත් අහනවා. Right? How කියලා අහන්න. I will show you how 7. Right? So governance කියන්නේ in which board committee is taking care of SRRO. In the board meeting, if you are only looking profit, numbers, financial, revenue, profit, cash flow, then you are not thinking about society. No? Are you looking your emission per dollar? That's called carbon intensity. Now this is rising. You are making some product which has a very high emission. The product is made from by exploiting child labor, forced labor, the female working till 12 o'clock in midnight. So consumers may not buy this type of product. Violating laws, not paying for those OT hours, those are SRRO. Whether board of directors are looking those numbers as a part of their thing, what charter the SRRO is there, TURO charter, do they have the skill and competence, are they discussing this in meeting, is this connected to the business, are they overlooking, monitoring? That's what governance means. The company's governance process and controls to monitor and manage these SRRO, which is coming from resources and relationship, right? And then that is the board. And when it comes to management, remember, in always we use, even in SL1, now with S1 I forget the strategic level one, SL1 paper, one of the critical paper, advanced business reporting paper. Now in corporate governance, or risk management, we speak about 3 lines model. On the top, governance is there. Then the first line means those who are running the business. The second line means those who are monitoring. Third line means those who are auditing, internal audit probably. Now management means those 3 lines. Now in company, if you are a, now let us say you are a manager in that say bottle manufacturer or beverage manufacturer, you are a production manager, you are the first line. So you are wasting a lot of energy, right? The AC to all of that, lot of waste, right? So that means you are creating a lot of emissions, right? So that's manager. Then there is somebody to check you, he is also ignoring you, S2, not S2, the second line. Third line, the internal audit or compliance people are detecting this and reporting, at least good that if that happens. So the management means, what is the process where management monitors SRRO? Simple. The governance can know the board dekේ role, governing body role, manager role, but I have a very clear slide. මම කියවනේ how හතක් තියෙනවා කියලා, house ටික පෙන්නලා we will come back to this. On house, sorry, not හතක්, 5 house of the board. මේක හරි tough. Board of directors ලාගෙන් ප්‍රශ්න 5ක් අහනවා. How right? How responsibilities for SRRO are there in the reference or mandate or chart. Again, කොහේ හරි මේක document වෙලා තියෙනවා that they are responsible. And then how, because if they don't understand whatever you learn in this lecture as a board of directors, scope 1, 2, 3, no idea, then how will they know, right? Do they have the skill and knowledge? If not, are they going to be developed? That is why now there are a lot of trainings, awareness sessions being done, right? And then next, how often they are looking these numbers, how often they are informed about SRRO. The last week meeting, right, this child labor, forced labor, the release in wastewater or chemical contamination product claims, these were not discussed in board meetings, right? So that's do not discuss SRRO or discuss. So that's this point. And how they are going to take into account, especially like I said, when they make decisions in the company. Now let us say company is going to invest, they want to invest, they want to reduce their carbon footprint, they want to transition to a new low carbon economy, invest in rooftop solar, right, or invest in some new energy optimization devices, like when you walk into the room only light comes, right, those are sensors, right, and save a lot of emissions. And even tap එක ඇරලා ඔය දාලා තියෙන එහෙම නෙවෙයි. So when you close near to the tap only it works, right? So that all works from sensors. So that is all about optimization, right? So these things board are considering when they invest, so when they make decisions. And when they want to sell a new product, they are looking the emission factor of this product and even marketing that. So that part is called, they are considering SRRO, see this word, strategy, decision on major transactions. And trade-off. Trade-off means sometimes if you want to do good for the society or the planet, your margin will drop. That's called trade-off. Trade-off, right? So it's not always positive, there is imbalance. So you have to balance it. And finally, this target setting is what I spoke about, 2030 net zero target, right? You need to set off your non-renewable energy through your solar and say I am net zero now in 2030. You have set that SBTI target. SBTI means a global organization. They are certifying you that you are going to reduce. You have defined your boundaries. That word is very important. Say you are a company like I spoke, Haley's 140 whatever companies now, they need to identify all of these subsidiaries. Should I account for my carbon accounting, how and so on, right? So then you apply that greenhouse gas protocol. So this part is very important for SL1, and if you look at the exam, the first point you need to know, the role of the board is captured here. If I go back to my one slide on S1, the governance is that we have fully covered. Then the strategy is all about SRRO. Your risk strategy, right? Now this strategy piece in the S1 standard says, how are you going to identify SRRO? I am happy to say we have done that already. Now we know how SRRO comes. We know prospects means three things: cash flow, access to finance, and cost of capital. We have learned that. We know SRRO comes from where. And also the difficult thing is you have to say, because it's IFRS, what is the effect, quantify effect, right, current, this year and future impact on the entity's business model and value chain. Now see, like Haley's explained, without the water, their yield is going to drop in future. That is the explanation, we already read it. And then how this is going to change your decisions, that is also very connected. And the most importantly, you have to quantify the impact on your balance sheet and P&L and cash flow. Now this is an extremely important point under what is that principle, transitional relief in the standard or proportionality principle. They say standard is very good. ඔයාට අමාරු නම් මේ වැඩේ කරන්න මේ quantify කරන එක models දාලා ගොඩක් වැඩ තියෙනවානේ, right? Now there is some relief given, right? If you don't have this capacity, you do qualitatively. I have a very important slide before I finish. I'll show you that. You can't quantify, you are showing qualitatively because you don't have that sophisticated tools to do that. In future, you are going to do that. But so standard recognized. So quantification is very difficult. Value at risk. You need to have a model because this is future. Because of climate change now in Haley's scenario or rubber, or because of the rain, now are you going to quantify this is the impact? It's difficult. You can, certainly. The resilience, I am happy we discussed. Resilience means now if there is a sudden chronic or acute risk, now you know, right? Now your plant is going to shut down, but you have another plant to run. That's your resilience. So that's mostly from risk management language, business continuity plan. And then risk. Now this is about how you manage SRRO. මේක මොකක්ද එතකොට risk යන්නේ? Now this is where now a company risk management process එකක් normally තියෙනවනේ. Risk management process කියන්නේ you identify risk, you prioritize what are the significant risks, you manage and report it. So that same process company should have it, right? Risk management process. Only thing you need to now marry SRRO with this process as a part of your normal risk management. What are the inputs that you are looking? What are the scenarios you are looking? How are you going to quantify the risk? How are you going to prioritize the risk? Right? So what is that process? How it is connected? Now last point is very important. This SRRO, is it connected? Right? SRRO, is it connected to your risk management process? And finally, what are the numbers that you are going to disclose? What is your scope 1, 2, 3? Right? Emission per dollar. So like that, every company, based on your industry, there are things you need to report based on SASB standards specifically, right? If it is a hotel, there are mandatory disclosures you need to make. I showed you if it is apparel, you are going to show your priority raw material, right? So that metrics are normally given in the SASB standards. You can easily follow that and then report the numbers. So the last one is reporting those numbers, right? So I think this is a critical slide, and then I think in the interest of time I am now drawing more attention to the critical areas. So I will now show you how Haley's has adopted this governance strategy and risk management. Very important practical slide about application. Remember, this is the latest annual report, right? They say, look here, for governance we have a ESG committee. The board members are there. We are quarterly reporting this. The audit committee is looking at, wow, good governance. And then I said strategy is about identifying SRRO and manage it. So they have 4 key sectors, climate strategy they have set about operational, value chain, opportunities. So they have disclosed something, and this is the risk management connectivity. They have an integrated risk management process. And then matrix, I already spoke about science-based target, which means you are committing externally, and then they are trying to improve their emissions, especially they are going to widen scope 3. Remember at the start of this lecture I told you there are 15 categories, scope 1, 2, 3, and then time horizon. And remember SASB, because they have 140 odd companies, there are 7 SASBs they are going to use to cover maybe rubber, hotel, plantation and so on. And they are also using GRI standard to identify SRRO, right? So that's how that has been applied. So very easy, I mean if you understand the standard logically, I mean it's not rocket science, it's about good judgment. And then I am also again happy to come to my first slide and ask you, what did you learn now? Have we done better? Yes. Now we know SRRO, even scope 1, 2, 3 also we can highlight now. Transition risk we know. Resilience also we discussed. Proportionality we discussed. Right? Climate first is a very simple thing. Chronic, acute, most of the things we have discussed. Good. So I want to draw, before we finish the lecture, S2. Remember, I am changing only one word in this bigger slide from S1 to S2. I am changing one word. What is that word? SRRO I replace with CRRO. The same slide, CRRO, right? The governance, CRR, everything. That means following the same architecture, S2 standard is to report climate change risk, which you already know, transitional risk, physical risk. And then remember in target and metrics you need to report your scope 1, 2, 3 emission. That's climate risk. So the climate first means IFRS says the first thing you can, in the first year you can report is only climate risk. Don't worry, because S1 talks about all type of SRRO, but when you report first time you only talk about climate risk. So that facility is given to you as a relief. That's called climate first, that also we learn now. So now this is very, very important. Toughest one in S1 and S2, carbon accounting, already spoke. Scope 1, 2, 3, how are you going to measure? Using this standard called a corporate accounting and reporting standard, greenhouse gas protocol. You have to follow that standard and disclose your emission. And these are the 15 categories which we discussed. The same slide we looked at earlier. We are very happy we have covered it. Scope 1 we know what you burn. Scope 2 is what you purchase. Scope 3 is your value chain, right? What are the products you purchase as raw material, how your employees are coming to work. Upstream, downstream means how you are distributing your products, right? So you will wonder now, see, I am wearing a denim, right? Let's go to Levi's straight away. I mean, be very practical. This is how Levi's has done their emission, right? Now you will wonder, 5.24, this is a bit older, but this is what is available. If you look at now also, it can't significantly vary by percentages. 5.24 million tons of their emission. Now if you look at from where this emission generate when they do the scope 3, this is Levi's. When they did this initial study and look at how they have set their target, they want to reduce scope 1 and scope 2 by 2025, right? So the reduction, especially scope 3, by 40%, right? Purchase goods means your value chain. Now see, 31% of emission from fabric production. Now to produce fabric, how many liters of water, right? Washing and coloring, right? So fabric production 31%, cotton cultivation also captured, right? Then garments assembly, right? And what I want to draw your attention, now I said we are in a denim, the energy you are consuming, the consumer is burning, see the consumer's emission is 34%. So that's why now they talk about circular economy, end of life products. So how these products can be more environmentally friendly, right? So that's everywhere. When you go to a hotel, it talks about usage of travel and all of these, these requirements or instructions comes because we need to protect the planet. So coming back to the point that I made about the emission reporting, which is very important, scope 1, 2, 3 we have already learned, and this slide really need your attention. All of this is there, you can Google freely corporate accounting standard, you go and you can see definition of scope 1, 2, 3, right? So the scope 1 is coming from your operation that you own. So for example, if you are having a boiler or whatever diesels that you are consuming within the company, and then what you purchase from the CEB, that electricity scope 2, scope 3 is about your value chain, and scope 3 has 15 categories. It captures your investment, what you buy from the supplier, machines that you buy, all of that. So now accounting for that is not very easy, but I am making another big point for you to learn before I conclude this lecture. Imagine now I spoke about Haley's, let's say they have 140 plus subsidiaries. Now when in your consolidated accounts, how are you going to add these? For example, you have a subsidiary, their emission are you going to add totally? Or if it is 60% investment, are you adding only 60%? If you have an associate equity accounted investment 30%, are you going to add 30% or full thing? Now this part also clarified in carbon accounting standard, right? But the good news is, good or bad news is, IFRS says the reporting entity, if you are a consolidated entity, consolidated accounts if you are preparing, for carbon accounting also use the same boundaries, same entities. But there is a complication. Why complication? Because the carbon accounting is based on this greenhouse gas protocol. This standard has two methods. Please make a note. These type of difficult things examiner won't ask, but these are very critical issues, right? Now the carbon accounting standard, this is not the IFRS accounting standard. They say you can either use control approach, operational control, or financial control, right? Or equity share approach, that means based on if you have 60% shares, you only take 60%, right? Now the control approach, sometimes you have a subsidiary but you don't operationally involve, you don't operationally control, then you may exclude that. Whereas financial control approach means if you use this approach, although you don't have financial operational control, you use financial control and consider. But the point I want to say, right, if you apply the accounting standards SLFRS 10, the control concepts, you will say these are my subsidiaries to console. Let's say there are 50, whereas when you apply your carbon accounting based on this definition, you may not get the same number. Then at least you should be able to explain that, right? So that point you need to be aware. I think then the other important thing before I finish, I want to explain to you is the scenario planning. With that we can close this, scenario planning and the transitional relief. So the climate scenario is this. Yeah, climate resilience. Now what is this climate resilience? I am happy that we already covered this, right? So climate resilience, yeah, scenarios also here. Now these scenarios means what's going to happen in future. Now Paris Agreement says by 2030 we need to control emission level by 1.5 Celsius, right? Now if you apply this resilience, now one is IEA, that's the International Energy Agency. They are saying you can follow 4 scenarios and pick the scenario for Sri Lanka. Now there net zero emission, one is net zero emission by 2050. which means you want to achieve 1.5 by 2050, right? Very rapid decarbonization. Remember, this decarbonization means you are moving to net zero, right? So idea is to move to net zero by 2050. Then stated policy scenarios, that means the middle path here, that you want to come to 1.5 by following a middle path. That's another scenario. Then there is another scenario called, I will show you graphically in the next slide, announce pledges scenario. This scenario assumes that all announced national, Sri Lanka also has given an announcement. If these things are fully completed, then how are you going to bring down your emission? How are you going to achieve your targets? And sustainable, now this is like sustainable development goal is something that all of you should be aware. There are 17 principles. When you pass say Tummul area, you see that the sustainable development goal, the UN, these poverty, all of that, there is something called climate action. There, this scenario aims to meet the energy related UN sustainable development goal, right? Their idea is to limit warming well below 2, right? Well below 2. Now, when you have to select in Sri Lanka which one is applicable to them. Before that IFRS paragraph I am taking now, it says entity shall disclose information that enable users of financial statements to identify what are these climate, if climate related risk comes, how entity is going to prepare for that, how resilient they are. Now suddenly there is a hudhud, right, or a flood, your factory is fully shattered and you can't operate. Now you can't do that because you need to have some backup. So then what IFRS says, you don't need to worry about spending a lot of money with consultants. Initially you use even public scenarios, right? Now public scenarios means scenarios published by international organization like IEA. Now see, this is what I explained to you. Graphically you can understand now, right? Now see various scenarios, okay? Now here you can see the metric tons, gigatons of carbon dioxides, and based on the each year how the emission is going to reduce under different 4 scenarios, right? Before do that, I will show you this slide, then you will better understand the scenarios. Now see, temperature rise above 1.5 is a problem. No? Now if you take net zero scenarios, right, the green one, right, if we follow that, the emission level is like below 1.5. Then sustainable development goal is somewhere here. Then various parties have announced government the pledges like that, stated policies. So these are different scenarios they have published. There is another organization, that is IPC. So you picked any of the scenario in looking at Sri Lankan context, what is our target, by when it is going to go above, when are we going to expect certain risk, right? So that now if you again take the Haley's case, how they are going to explain this scenario planning, the climate related scenario, they say we have looked at, this is what I explained to you, IE scenario, right, IEA, and also there is IPCC, they have looked at everything and they have also looked at Sri Lanka scenarios, right, what as a country, our context, right, carbon net zero we are going to be 2050. Right, this is Sri Lanka target. By looking all of that, they have developed their scenarios like this. For example, they are taking the following physical and transitional risk are considered in developing their scenarios, right? Now this, if you take this scenario, lower emission scenario, global warming is limited to 2, right, by 2100, no one of us there, right? And then net zero status is achieved between this period. So accordingly they are reducing their emission, and as I explained to you, this is what, adaptation or mitigation. This is mitigation. You are trying to mitigate based on this scenario, and also you need to have a plan if something happens, adaptation. So likewise you can actually read more on this, but the point is, I think there is an example given. This is how they apply that scenario in practice. Now this slide is very important from understanding point of view practically. This, they say this is governance about CRRO, this is their strategy approach. Now take practically what are the risks that will be applicable to them. Precipitation and rainfall, temperature, physical and water availability or any other carbon taxes, things like that, market risk. Then they say scenario B and C is applicable. Now B and C is those that we spoke earlier, right? Now these ABC, they have explained, and under these scenarios, they are explaining qualitatively. See this word, qualitative assessment, not quantitative. Under this scenario, higher increase in temperature, more frequent droughts are expected in Sri Lanka, especially dry and intermediate zone. Climate prediction also project increased variability of rainfall, so that's going to affect them. So what are they going to do when it affects? So short term, what are they going to do? They are going to do diversification, all of that. The response, plantation sector is now increasingly diversifying their crops given the high sensitivity of tea to weather condition, data driven monitoring they are doing about precipitation, rainfall, identifying correlation with this and the yield, further investment in technology. Now this is what scenario planning. Now they are expecting whether, this is how climate change is going to behave and this is what we will do. That's all that you need to know. Based on what is the learning during last 10 minutes, use those general publicly available scenario, look at Sri Lankan scenario and try to at least do qualitatively. Quantitatively, to put a number may be difficult. But that is our last thing that we are going to study, very, very important from exam perspective. I am moving straight to that because of the time. Proportionality and transitional relief. So the proportionality, again, I already explained to you, the standard is very good because especially proportionality, transitional relief will start. It has a transitional relief, means it gives you a lot of relief. Don't worry about all SRRO. First you do your climate risk. That is called climate first. Report the climate risk, physical and transition risk. Then timing. You are given time to report, right? Company to report this same as you publish your annual report, you can do this. And they have also given 6 months later. Now for example, Dialog did like that. So after publishing accounts the first year, there is a timeline for you to produce. The other thing is, if you are not using this tough standard, when I say tough, simply because of the knowledge gap, otherwise the standard is very comprehensive, lot of guidance given, and CS Sri Lanka is already announced workshops to learn about these things. Greenhouse gas protocols, right, that is corporate accounting standard, which I really spoke in this session, to measure greenhouse gas. If you are not using this already, IFRS S2 allows company to use a different measurement, right? And first year you can, if you are using different method, use it. There are other methods, but next year you should align, first year. Then scope 3, which is a very difficult subject, they have given an exemption that first year you don't need to do scope 3. Now if you examine us, these are the transitional relief. And then the other thing is proportionality principle, that is to look at, now don't spend a lot of money. Remember, this is proportionality principle. Reasonable, use reasonable and supportable assumption, like what? The scenario analysis, scenario planning, use IEA or IPC scenarios. Look at the Sri Lanka scenarios using public data, do without spending a lot of money, right? So that is called without undue cost. Use reasonable and supportable assumption without undue cost. And secondly, you can use qualitative data wherever possible. So that's called, see, these two columns is the proportionality. Information use is limited to reasonable, supportable without undue cost. Qualitative approach allowed if company lacks the skill, capability and resources, which I already told. Specifically standard has highlighted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 few areas. Now you need to quantify financial effect of SRRO, right? You can use reasonable, supportable assumption. If you can't quantify, do it qualitatively, describe it by words. Climate related scenario planning, what Halis has done also in the first report, the qualitative one. Remember, Halis has early adopted because in 2025 only this is going to be mandatory. And then identification of risk and opportunity, of course, these are all, right? You can use what? Reasonable, supportable without spending a lot of money. Scope of the value chain, same. Calculation metrics, everything the same. Now you learn transitional relief and proportionality. Proportionality means these two. And the last one, you must know when this standard is applicable in Sri Lanka. Very important slide for you to know. And again, this you must know the first 100 companies right now based on what is there, 1st January, top 100, and all listed entities in the main board by 2026. All listed entities in Colombo Stock Exchange except Empower Board 27, and then entities listed in Colombo Exchange, Empower Board comes after that. Then companies that prepare based on Sri Lanka accounting standards above some value 10 billion, some value is given, that is 28, and then again other value that is 5 billion, like that. All other SBEs are going to be covered 2030. So the journey goes from 5 years, that's called paced out approach within a period of 5 years. Now, sorry, I have extended the lecture more than I think we started at 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, but within 2 hours, what you learn. If you ask me how much time I spent to learn, many hours, right? Extreme effort, but it's all interesting subject because we are living in this planet, not just for us to live, but for our future and love the planet and enjoy the life. So finally, I want to ask, did you learn this? The first slide that I put at the start, this is what you are going to learn, and you can see whether you are knowledgeable, at least conceptual clarity, but it don't stop from there. Start reading, and really if you are doing exam this time, very easy, look at those yellow, because examiner will look at that yellow and give a question. So probably we can do for the students few questions. I think with that I am going to conclude now. I hope you enjoy the lecture, because it's not just accounting, it's really about something that is impacting us, the humanity, right, and our life and the future generations' life, right? That's where the planet is important. Thank you very much.